Welcome grade 12s. In this video, we will be learning about the female reproductive system. Let's begin. Now the female reproductive system can also be broken down into 3 areas. The first part will be the organs that are responsible for the production of egg cells, also known as ova. The next area would be the organs responsible for transporting and taking care of those ova. And the next part would be the external sexual organs. Now, what are the organs responsible for the production of egg cells or ova? Yes, it is the ovaries. The ovaries are responsible for the production of our egg cells. And how many ovaries do we find in a female reproductive system? Very good. There are 2 ovaries. Now, what are the organs responsible for the transportation of these ova and then taking care of these ova? Very good. Involved in the transportation of the ova that's coming from the ovaries will be the fallopian tubes. Okay? And once the fallopian tubes pass these ova to the uterus, you'll find that it is there in the uterus where the carrying of the ova will take place. Okay, then we also get the vagina that plays a role in this area as well. Then we get the external sexual organs, and this is the vulva. Let's move on. Okay, now in front of you, you see the front view of the female reproductive system. Let's begin with the ovary. As you can see, we have 2 ovaries. What is the function of the ovary? Now the ovaries, children, are the female's sex organs, right? And the main function of the ovaries is the production of female gametes. What are the female gametes? Very good. It is the egg cells, also known as ova. Let's take a trip into these ovaries and learn more about the structures inside. Inside an ovary, what do we find? Wow, look at this. We will notice that each of the ovary is richly supplied with blood vessels. Do you see that? Another important point to know is that each of the ovary is surrounded by a layer of germinal epithelium. Can you see the layer of germinal epithelium there? Each of these ovaries have this layer of germinal epithelium, right? What does the germinal epithelium do? Yes, it is always dividing. And when the germinal epithelium cells are dividing, it's going to develop egg cells. It's going to develop ova. We also find these structures inside the ovary. What are those? Yes, these are all follicles. Can you see the follicles? These follicles have a purpose, children. They secrete the female sex hormones. And what are the female sex hormones? Very good. It is the estrogen as well as the progesterone. Now I'm going to mention a word called puberty. What is puberty, children? Yes, puberty is a time in life when a boy or a girl becomes sexually mature. It is the period during which human sex organs are starting to develop and they are starting to produce gametes, which are sex cells. Now, puberty starts in boys at around the age of 12 years. But girls enter puberty between the age of 10 and 14 years. Now, during puberty, what happens in girls is that the female sex hormones, right, which are the estrogen and the progesterone that we mentioned, they are going to be responsible for the development of the female characteristics. Like what? Like the increase in the size of the breasts, the development of pubic hair in the armpits, as well as menstruation. Let's move on. Above each ovary, we find tubes, right? Now these tubes are opening above the ovaries, and one end of the tube opens into the uterus. What is the name of that tube? These two tubes are known as the fallopian tube, and the fallopian tube is also known as the oviduct. Now, what do you think the function of these fallopian tubes are? Right? Now, anything that has a tubular kind of a structure is obviously going to play a role in transportation, right? So these fallopian tubes, children, are going to convey or transport ova or egg cells from the ovaries, okay, and take it into the uterus, right? So that is the function of the fallopian tubes. They are going to convey or transport ova or egg cells from the ovaries into the uterus. Besides that, the fallopian tube is also a site where fertilization can occur. What is fertilization? Fertilization is the process now that's going to involve the sperm fusing with an ovum, which eventually leads to the development of an embryo. Now the two fallopian tubes lead to the uterus, which is also known as the womb. You will notice that the wall of the uterus is divided into 3 layers. The outermost layer is known as the perimetrium. Now the perimetrium is regarded as a serous layer. Serous means it produces a serum or a fluid, right? Now being a serous layer, this perimetrium is busy secreting a lubricating fluid, right? And this lubricating fluid is going to help to reduce any friction. The middle layer of the uterus is very, very muscular, and it's called the myometrium. The myometrium is in fact the thickest layer of the uterus, as you can see, right? And it is made up of smooth, involuntary muscle. Now, being such a muscular layer, this myometrium is going to play a very important role. How? Well, it has the ability to contract. Now, when does this myometrium actually start to contract? Well, it contracts during menstruation. And when it contracts during menstruation, it is going to expel or get rid of that endometrial lining. The myometrium also plays a very important role during childbirth to push the fetus or propel the fetus out of the uterus. The innermost lining of the uterus is called the endometrium. Now this endometrium plays a very important role, right? Every month, this endometrium thickens. What causes it to thicken is the hormone estrogen, right? It thickens and it renews itself, preparing for pregnancy. Now, if pregnancy doesn't occur, you will find that the endometrium will simply shed in a process called menstruation. But if conception does take place, then the embryo will become implanted into this endometrium. So when the endometrium thickens, what happens? It is preparing itself for the implantation of a fertilized egg cell or an ovum. So overall, this uterus has a very important role to play, children. So the functions of the uterus include, number 1, nurturing the fertilized ovum that develops into a fetus and holding it till the baby is mature enough for birth, right? The fertilized ovum will then to get all the nourishment from the blood vessels that this uterus is richly supplied with. So we've dealt with the uterus. Now let's move on to the vagina. Where will I find the vagina? Well, the vagina leads from the uterus to the outside by means of an external opening called the vulva. Right? And what happens is during copulation, the penis is going to be placed into the vagina, right, where it's going to release its spermatozoa. Now, connecting the vagina with the uterus and acting as a gateway is the cervix. Right. Now, this cervix, children, is a very important part of the female anatomy. It's actually very incredible because it keeps the bacteria out of the uterus. How does the cervix do that? Well, the cervix is busy producing a discharge that will actually clean the vagina, and it is able to actually change its positioning so that it can help to facilitate or protect a pregnancy.